Welcome back, everybody, to the Party Poker Live Millions World final table. As you would expect, this is how they stack up to start the final. Well, Paul Tedeschi with the shortest stack, but 32 big blinds is a lot to be getting on with. And there you go. Total prize pool 10 million, nearly reaching the guarantee, falling 6 players short. And you see how things look there. Champion will walk away with $2 million and of course the title of Millions World Champion. Action to Pool, mid position, Red Kings. Saw him 3-bet squeeze the very first hand of the day. Be interesting when the players find out that that's what's happened. H alpha pocket nines. Oh, well, this will go some way to helping him. Steve O'Dwyer finds pocket jacks in the next seat. Pulls out a 3-bet to 4.5 million. He knows Steve will be trying to put a lot of pressure on him, so he may elect to just slow play this one. Steve has a lot of bluffs here. Just counting out to see how easy it will be to have some 4-bet bluffs. Stack size doesn't lend itself too well to that. He has less than 40 bigs. So he does decide to slow play. I like this. Keeps in all those bluffs from Steve. Checks, and this is a clear C-bet for Steve. Jacks, somewhat vulnerable, and as I say, he has a lot of bluffs in his range. So he can get action from worse hands. Paul had a smaller pocket pair, it'd be very hard for him in this situation. Steve goes for the same bet. He made it pre-flop, 4.5 million. There it is. All in move, snap call from Steve. 6 spades on the turn. Ace of clubs on the river, no use. Pool doubles up to 52 million. Steve drops down to the same number. Just like that, shortest stack at the table doubles up and is now second in chips. Roger 1.5, under the gun +1. Andras ace king offsuit in the next seat. Roger just raised fold of the last hand.
It's 31 now.
Roger in a pretty tough spot here. Last time was much easier to fold the king, queen, ace, queen, that much stronger. Albeit we saw he had a lot of hands. Of course, Roger does make the call with ace, queen. 10, 8, deuce, all clubs. Well, Roger looking pretty good on this one. His hand's in great shape if Andras has no club, and that is the case. And just very hard to see with this board with ace, king, red. Is going to bet 4 million. Roger, well, pretty clear call holding the queen of clubs. For just 4 million. Already think it's getting a little scary. Pot gap will be up to 20 million. Roger with just 22 behind if he makes this call. Queen on the turn. Gin for Roger makes top pair. Andras picks up a gut shot draw to Broadway. Has been checked over to him. Got to be a little concerned. What kind of hands Roger flats the 3-bet with. And then calls on the flop. Of course, Broadway club combos would be the strongest. Some pocket pairs. Looks like he's going for the former like this. Andras having 3-bet and bet the flop does have some strong hands in there that are worse. And just gives it up. Roger up to 42 million in chips.
Take that, you bully.
Ben, pocket jacks, 1.575 million. And look at this, for the third time in a row, Ace King is out there. This time it's Paul in heart against the chip leader. Wouldn't be surprised just to see him flat here. He is going to raise it up. Pretty small, just under 3x in fact. Steve O'Dwyer, ace queen off in the next seat.
11.
Now I like this from Steve, makes it 11 million to play. Ben will in a horrible spot. Look at this, Feraldo with jacks behind as well. Of course, he a lot shorter than the others with 30 million in chips, just over 40 bigs. But with only 30 million, it would only be 19 million more to call for Steve. Now some of those bluffs are hands like ace queen. This is a horrible spot for Feraldo. And there we go, he does let it go. Expect Ben to do the same. Unfortunate for Steve here that Paul happens to have ace king because he's made 2 pairs of jacks fold.
Yeah.
And again, Paul wrapping huge strength if he were to 5-bet here. Given that he's 3-bet the chip leader in the first place, he does move all in. I don't think Steve's done anything wrong here. That was the perfect candidate to make that move with. Given they are second and third in chips to start this hand. Well, Feraldo and Ben 86 will pat themselves on the back having seen Paul move all in. Roger pocket jacks on the button against the undergun open. He's coming out with a 3-bet. Well, we've seen a lot of pre-flop action on this table. Players won't yet know that they've all had hands. Nine, deuce, deuce. Good looking flop for both hands. It is Roger still out in front, of course, with his jacks. Of course, clear C-bet for Roger with jacks up. Nearly all of his 3-bets pre-flop. Wow, jack on the turn. Roger was ahead anyway, but he's going to feel very happy about having top boat. So expect him to bet here, try and get some more value. He does bet, and he bets 10 million. Well, this setting up for a half pot size river jam. He decided to 3-bet pre-flop. He blocks all those, so he does decide just to give this one up. Roger joins the party. Jack 6 of diamonds from the big blind. Queen 9-3, 2 hearts. Monstrous flop for Zhao. He with an open-ended straight draw and flush draw, but Paul with bottom set. We'll see a big one here. Paul surely will C-bet this flop texture. He'll raise or call. I suspect he may just call this. That will allow Feraldo to call also. We may see this go 3-way to the turn. Don't forget, Paul is showing a fair bit of strength, C-betting into the 2 ranges of Zhao and Neil. That is on Feraldo now, facing a bet and a call in front of him, holding top pair. Won't be loving life though with Queen and a 10 kicker. pair. 17 million chips in the middle for this one. And what a lovely looking card that is for Paul. The deuce of spades.
8 million.
Just below half pot, 8 million the bet. Zhao makes the call, and now Farada can surely get away from this, having seen the same action repeated on the turn. If Zhao had folded, he may have hung around. But once Zhao calls, he knows normally has a better queen. Brick on the river, unsurprisingly the way Paul's day's been going. Well, two options here, check or bet. I don't like check, only works if you think your opponent. There it is. Zhao, of course, folding that misdraw. Oh, yeah, that'd have been a little wide if he decided to do anything there. Would be it flat or 3-bet. Could put a lot of pressure in by 3-betting, but Queen 3 offsuit, such a bad hand. And if we're 3-betting that, we're 3-betting pretty much his entire range. Be way too many bluffs. Be very exploitable. Charles flops top pair on 8-5 deuce, checks over to Ben. Open 2 overs and backdoor heart draw, holding the Queen of Hearts. He's counting out a C-bet. Try and knock Charles off some, perhaps ace high. Charles, of course, calls with that top pair, top kicker. And checks the 10 of spades over to Ben. Had to be 10x of hearts.
6.5 million.
And that is why Ben is going to fire again. Try and attack perhaps a hand like 6s or 7s. Some of the ace highs that call the flop. Those flush draws that may be in there would be very hard for him to call the turn bet. Of course, is going to make the call with such a strong hand as the flop top pair. River 9. A lot of Ben's bluffs have improved on this card. Charles will hate to see Queen Jack, Jack 9, Queen 9. Hands like this have all got past Charles's 8. But spades and hearts did miss. Getting a good price on the bluff.
All in.
He does make the move all in, and this is a horrid spot for Charles. Charles, though, doesn't really block any of the bluffs. Does have to let it down on that river. Nice bet from Ben. A nice bet size here from Ben, over 3x, targeting one of these medium stacks. Roger does make the call with 10-8 of hearts and flops top pair on 10-6-3 rainbow. Very good looking flop for his hand. Does of course check it over to the pre-flop 3-better. Ventilarine with ace high. Looks like he's going to keep up that MO. Betting just 3.2 million. This will allow Roger to call with some weaker aces. Four on the turn brings a backdoor diamond draw. Ben does have the ace of diamonds. Roger checks his top pair. Well, he is going to fire 8 million this time. As well as, of course, the strong hands. Roger calls the 8 million, having it just under pot behind. As another big pot goes down on this Millions World final table. Queen on the river. Ben finally makes the winning hand. Roger checks, and this is beautiful for Ben. flop. So there are some bluffs in there. He has a lot of strong hands here as well. He does move in for 32 million is Roger's stack. And well, Roger hates this one. Does make the fold. Good fold from Roger. Yet again, a very well played hand by both players. Reiner, ace 6 in the big blind. He will peel. Take a flop heads up. Six, 4, 3. Reiner flopping top pair. Pretty unlikely card to flop top pair with. And Paul with a gut shot draw with his pair of deuces. .4, going a little larger, trying to dissuade some of the light peels. It's really targeting overcards, ace highs, etc. Of course, always a little worrying when you face a bet this size on your Reiner's chip stack. Because of the short stacks around, he really doesn't want to bust. He doesn't want pots swelling into a position where he can be put all in by the river. And that flop bet size does just that. Well, 5 on the turn gives Paul the straight. Reiner drawing just the chop. Here we go. He does take that option, bets 4 million. Paul, of course, far from the nuts, but straight. Feel pretty confident with. Reiner will feel a little uneasy about that. He's obviously trying to knock out just overcard combinations. Obviously beats all the other 2-pair combos. Is going to bet this blocking bet as well, of course. Does stop him getting raised unless Paul had a flush. Paul, of course, just with an easy call here. Not loving life. Reiner, a lot of his bluffs on the turn would have included heart combos. But for just 5.5 million, way too good a price if he's getting bluffed. And of course, very outside chance Reiner also has a deuce. And Reiner gets the bad news. His opponent did turn that straight. Ben, ace 9 of clubs in the small blind. This is certainly a hand he'll be interested in playing. These the deeper stacks. 47 bigs is what Steve opened off. Ben makes the call. Charles folds 8-3 off from the big blind off his 20 bigs. What a flop it is. King, queen, 4, 2 clubs. Nut flush draw for Ben. Set of queens for Steve. Does have ace high, but against a slightly tighter range of Steve under the gun. Can put a lot of pressure on the one pair hands. King, queen obviously within Ben's range. Steve recognizing the texture against the small blind peel. There's a lot of hands he's going to want to continue with, and some he just can't continue for any size. So he goes a little bit bigger, tries to get these hands in. Of course, with that size, not likely to see Ben check raise. $11 at the bet. Really going after Ben if he has a hand like King Jack. Does make the call. Jack on the end. Oh, this is another great card for Steve. If Ben did have a hand like King Jack, improves to 2-pair. The only realistic way he's beaten is against 10-9 or ace-10 of clubs. He does move it in. Ben will quickly fold. Oh, well, Paul, wouldn't you know it, lurking behind with a big pair of pocket jacks. Just deciding how best to play his hand with Steve behind, and he is going to play, I'd imagine, his entire range as a flat here. Well, Steve looks down at a suited ace, but against Paul's flooding range, not in great shape with that hand. does give it up. Can the former Super High Roller Bowl champion get out of this one? Not so far. Does pick up some backdoor draws though on the 10-5-4 to spade flop. Six of clubs, none of those materializing. You see Steve's face, an ace-9 of spades. Everyone on this table, Bar Rainer, is rooting for a brick. And it is a king on the end. That is why he is such the champion that he is. Ace, king, offsuit in the cutoff. He, of course, is gonna 3-bet. 6.7 million the bet.
Should we try to find out who has left the sticky?
Are you taking an extension?
Anybody had like some kind of chewing gum in the bag?
Just wondering if...
You're not going to be mad, you just need to know. But
Well, Steve in an awkward spot here holding pocket sevens. Definitely a hand he wants to continue with, but this sizing pretty healthy. They are pretty deep. A pair is a pair. So he does make the call. Wow, what a flop for Steve. Jack 7-6 rainbow second set. He checks it to Andras. Wow, with not no pair. Pretty safe board. Will he bet or check? Pot's already so big, 16
I
million.
think it's more of the fear. I think that's most
Does want to protect his hand.
The actual act of getting hit, it's just that you're being punished. Yeah.
Bets 7 million. Of course, Steve will just posture here a while before calling.
Cool.
Big pot brewing. Just under 30 million chips in this one. Andras a little bit more than that behind. Well, the 6 on the turn gives Steve top boat. Andras hoping to check this back, try and get to showdown now, I think. Well, 10 on the end, completes 8-9, the only real straight draw on the board. Looks like he is betting almost all of Andras' stack, 33 million. And in a spot where it's hard to have too many super strong hands. Steve back over the 80 million chip mark where he began the day. That is what these guys are playing for. Everyone has locked up $250,000. It wouldn't take a lot for these guys on 15 bigs behind the jam. Well, here we go. Zhao, 17.5 million. Exactly that. A perfect situation for him in his mind to jam. 17.5 bigs. Pardon me, less than that, of course. We're 6-12 now, so even more attractive position for him. He does move them in. Music to the ears of Paul. It'll be the third time he takes a short stack all in. Will it be third time lucky? And does fold. Snap call, of course, from Paul. So for the third time of asking, will we lose someone in ninth place? King 10 or 8 would give him additional outs. Well, the ace, top set for Paul. Knuckles on the table. Zhao is eliminated in ninth place. It took over 3 hours to lose a player. But it is Portuguese high roller making his way out. Does pick up, of course, $250,000 for his efforts. Deuces, I mean, he doesn't have fold equity, does he?
I mean, I think this is basically a spot where we sort of just have to gamble. You know, Steve is obviously going to be opening with lots of hands. Obviously, we're flipping a lot because he is going to be calling us. This is a disaster, though, with Roger behind and picking up the 8s.
And Roger just getting a count, of course, 8s. Very strong a hand against Ferrado's range. And Steve.
He does do so.
There it is. Gets Steve
Gonna call.
out of the way, so I was going to call, of course. Frado needs a deuce.
Yeah, this is pretty gross.
Yeah.
Is Frado in need of help? So we find ace, 10 for all spades. Well,
Backdoor chops.
yeah, spade, spade. Just the deuce.
Yep.
Queen on the end, no good. He taps the table.
Good
and
game, Neil.
here's Neil out in 8th place, picking up $300,000. Not too shabby.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we know Neil's background. He has a lot of stellar results. I know he'll be very disappointed.
It seems to me the vibe that I got from reading about him. Well,
Oh,
we'll come back to that in a
Andres.
second, because yeah, Andres is pulling out a 3-bet here.
I quite admire Andres' heart. He seems to be one of the guys who's willing to put his head above the
yeah.
the parapet, you know.
For 2 days straight, we've seen this from Andres. He does not bat down.
Yeah. You know, this is where we just have to be able to play poker, right? Because theoretically, of course, Andres should have a pretty strong range in general. There is the shorter stacks. There's the ICM considerations. Paul knows that Andres knows that Paul can bust him. So Paul's supposed to have it here a lot, right? And I don't mind this taking one off in position, you know, to take advantage of when Andres is a little lighter,
And all
which,
this,
as we can see, is now.
all this time this is going off. Rainer and Charles are loving life, aren't they? You're seeing. Well, we've got another 20 million chip pot going off when the shorter stack's only got 35 million behind. It's like you can bust. Someone can bust any hand here. It seems on this final table.
But I mean, fair play. It looks like he's finding the heart to put a c-bet.
Wow, he is.
It's actually hard to think of too many hands that Paul can fold here.
All right,
And this might be one of them, even though he has the ace of hearts.
all right. I was going to say, of course, the ace of hearts such a crucial card, but
Sure.
what we've seen so far of Paul, I would expect him to continue. And as you say, you know, this is a board he has a lot of continues on. This is probably one of the worst hands he does continue with, right?
I think it literally could be the worst hand.
The ace of hearts with some sort of straight action. Wow. Well, this is a spicy one. Surely now Andres
I mean,
has
he
to give up.
has to shut down, I think.
If he fires here, then we got a new hero.
I actually think if you find the heart to fire this, then you deserve to win the tournament.
Does check. So it would make sense to check back. And of course, you do beat Andres' junk.
No, he's going to go for it. Interesting.
6.5.
And I was going to say, if he does go, he bets very small, leaving himself room to jam the river.
There we go, the sigh of resignation. I guess we can bet small here and still get hands like 10s and jacks to fold, even though we represent jacks. I mean, they might take one off.
Right.
But they must be aware that they're going to get shoved on the river pretty much always, I think.
2.5 the bet.
I think I'm going to switch my allegiance to Andres from Feraldo. I just kind of admire the heart he's showing and taking on the big stacks.
Rhino with King Jack on the button against that late position. Sorry, pardon me. I think Andres had raised. Steve's raised from +1.
Wow, is he? I was about to say, interesting spot. Wow, Rainer's going to put this in.
He is going to put it in, and of course, Steve will have to call this. He won't love it, will he?
No, he's not going to be thrilled. 13 big blind shove from Rainer. You say he's not going to love it. He absolutely fist pumped it in. Oh. Well, it's dead to the back doors.
Yeah, this one is going to take a little bit more work than the last one to get out of. Can the former super high roller bowl champion wiggle his way out of Steve O'Dwyer's grip? The answer is no. 6 of diamonds on the turn confirms his exit in 7th place. And well, he'll be one that I expect will be making his way over to the 250k.
Yeah, Rainer, like very, very strong player, as we know. Massive high roller pedigree. Look at that, guys. That's why we've got such an overlay. It's an empty poker room.
Main event, I guess, on dinner break. It's not quite that good an overlay.
I know. We can.
You see there that just the first tables you can see in the picture at the top there. They are the 250k tables.
I kind of like it just in terms of, you know, exploiting our, leveraging our chip stack against Roger, and also people seem to, in my experience, you know, this is something that's coming more into poker. People are limping in early positions so that they can call a raise, and you know, rather than opening and be 3-bet, and then inflating the pot. Like typically, you see people doing it with suited broadways and maybe hands like this that aren't the elite hands. Like I don't think it's crept fully into the game yet. You know, where people are limping ace king off here, for example, and then looking to proceed.
Well, He did over.
Oh, he overlimped.
With
Okay.
the 7-6 suited, which is pretty good, right? But
Yeah.
and he doesn't mind taking it multi-way, I guess. Paul from the small computer king 7. Steve with deuce 4 on the big checks his option. Sees him flop and open in his straight draw. It is Paul and Ben who flop top pair. Ben with a gut draw to go with it. But Roger, after all of that, is still out in front with an overpair. So something for everyone here, and it is Steve coming out firing from the big blind.
You know, anything can happen, and with these specific set of hands, this is going to be super interesting. Steve, you know, this obviously, as we know, this flop favors Steve a lot, right? Steve has all the 2-pair combos that got to see the flop for free.
Right.
Has all the 4-6 offsuit for the straights, and also has the 4 in his hand that will block the 4-6 for the straight. Roger must continue now. Ben, I mean, I don't think Ben can ever fold here. Top pair and a gutter.
All right. Yeah.
I would expect him to overcall here, I think. And then what's Paul going to do is pretty...
Yeah, Paul in a pretty bizarre spot against him.
Yeah.
He has king 7, but hand doesn't really ever improve bar hitting 2-pair. Doesn't know what the bad turn cards are even.
Sure.
Would you be that shocked to see him fold?
I actually think he'll fold quickly here. There's just so many bad turns.
There we go.
Yeah, he did fold quick.
As you said, not did you call him folding, but quickly.
Yeah.
Snap folded. Well, he would have liked that turn because it would have given him a flush draw.
I mean, the life of O'Dwyer.
But Steve O'Dwyer finds a straight. Roger finds an open-ended straight draw and an overpair. And Ben with top 2 pair.
Benjamin can for sure have 8-9. But obviously, with such a coordinated board with 2 flush draws, expect Steve to bet to try and get value and protect his vulnerable straight.
And of course, no blockers to the pairs has size pretty big because he can run into 2 pairs on this kind of board, especially I guess in Ben's range more than Roger's. As you said, Roger limping under the gun.
I think Roger just must fold here. The problem is we do also have Ben behind who could, even though we blocked 8-9 suited, could have one of the combinations of that. Ben can have a set, right? For sure, the way this hand's played. Could have a straight also, so we're basically forced to fold our 8s.
6s and 4s play the same way, wouldn't they?
They would, for sure.
Well, Steve's showing a lot of strength, having bet the flop and then bombed the turn. But of course, Ben, you know, even if he's suspicious he's beat here, he has to call, right? Because he has top 2, he can improve.
Sure. It's actually not impossible that we can bluff some rivers if we do think that Steve has a 4 in his hand.
A spade being the primary candidate.
Even an 8 or a 9, right, is like not impossible that we might go for this.
Well, 5 does pair the board, but not the one Ben wanted. But
he does block both the houses, though.
Yeah.
Well, both the top houses. Excuse me.
What is this? You put too much. Oh, I put too much? Oh, yeah, I did. Oops.
Well, not the worst river card in the deck for Steve, but not a great one either. Like you say, a lot of the hands Ben calls the turn with that aren't the flush draws are, of course, 2 pairs.
Yeah, this is super interesting because, you know, does Ben even get to the river here with 9-10 of spades, for example, for 15 million on the turn? I'm not sure he does. It's not impossible that Ben goes for this, but will he think he can have enough showdown, or does he recognize he needs to bluff Steve off or straight?
Right, Steve does have some bluffs himself, of course. Some of those combo spade draws, like if he had 8 of spades and another spade in his hand, might play this way. Does Steve have enough value hands on the turn that can check for the river? A lot of Steve's value hands himself would now be 4 houses, right, that he may check.
Although the interesting thing about that is, let's say that Steve had 7-5 or 6-5 on the turn against 2 opponents when it comes 4 to straight. Would he bet 15 million? Very interesting hand, actually.
My table, you know, I'm Jason Kuhn, I'm betting everyone, so it's fine. No, he didn't say that, of course. Jason, one of the most modest high rollers you'll ever meet.
Yeah, absolute gent.
He was, he felt pretty happy, pretty confident. A lot of fun playing for that amount of money. As Steve from the cutoff with ace-6 offsuit sees a king-jack-7 board against Ben 86 in the big, who pairs his jack holding jack-4. Steve is going to fire out a bet. Right, especially in this kind of board texture against big blind, right?
Sure.
Big blind just has so many folds.
Not sure if this will be one of them.
Right, if the turn was say for example a queen.
Yeah. I think
our
a queen
has
or
a jack
10,
or a 7. It's really hard for them to continue, right?
Definitely.
Of course, the 3, not like you say, one of them. Well, there's a 10.
Nope. As we thought, he does check.
Does does indeed check. And so Steve, if you were going to bluff here, targeting some hands like 10-9, 10-8,
Yeah.
like Queen 10, a hand like Jack 4 perhaps.
I think the problem with it is if Steve has Ace Queen, for example, right, which would be one of the viable candidates to value bet river, it probably goes ahead and barrels turn. You know, like if he wants to target a 7 or a Jack to fold, would certainly make sense to bet that hand.
I was going to ask here, sizing-wise, I was going to say a small bet maybe makes more sense, but he's gone 10 into 14.5. This, I was thinking a small bet, try and make out you could be value betting, say a hand like Queen Jack.
Yeah, I like that a lot, Demps. You know, we can bet small here to try and get value from a 7, and obviously from the worst Jack, and even, like you said, a hand like Queen 10. Let's see if Benjamin can sniff it out.
This sizing, though, 10 million, it's saying a little bit of a stronger one-pair hand, or better, of course. You'd expect Steve to fire his flush draws on the turn. Yeah. And there we go. Ben, for that sizing, does sniff it out.
Might be the first misstep we've seen there from Steve, just in terms of the believability of the sizing, as you said, James.
Right, yeah, I think...
every decision here for the short stacks is just so precarious.
Call.
Charles does defend, which is, you know, definitely viable. Heads up against a cutoff open. Ooh.
Wow. What a flop this is. Nut flush draw, gut shot, and an over for Roger. Charles, bottom pair, and does hold the King of Hearts, which is...
I mean, the problem here is, I mean, this is going to be a pretty trivial bet, call it off for Roger, or bet to look to shove turn. This is what's so tough about playing these hands out of position off this shallower stack.
Roger does continue with a lot of hands he bets with on this kind of texture.
Wow.
Well, there is the all-in.
I mean, it's never getting through.
Yeah, Roger snaps. Well, Charles will be delighted to see when he does get snapped that he is actually up against the draw rather than a made hand. He is still 41%. King on the turn. Well, that removes
a huge card.
Yeah, a few of the outs. Ace and 8 no longer good. King on the end. Well, that's a pretty good run out. King's full for Charles. He now up to 37 million. So off the bottom of the floor.
Maybe a little less.
I think 2.5 maybe, because obviously a larger field.
They're paying out more of percentage in the field.
Well, Ace 9, 8, 2 clubs. This flop, Ben from the button with Ace 5. Paul flopping bottom pair from the big blind. Online poker was going so big. Black Friday happened. No one ever thought we'd get past those days of where we got to, but here we are, a few years later, and prize pools guaranteed way beyond those that were at the peak of online poker.
Yeah, it's amazing stuff. This is a tough spot for Paul. You know, very standard to defend here against Ben on the button. Ben's opening lots of pots. We've also seen, though, right, during this final table that Ben's c-bet percentage is super high, right? Like, very, very high. So, not at all surprised to see Paul check call. See what happens on the turn.
Well, that's what happens on the turn.
Wow.
Yes, Ben. Now, that's not a great turn card for him, is it? Kind of a risk, but he can get called by some worse hands, kind of like Queen Jack, Queen 10 that called the flop are going to continue. Some of the, 9 10, 9 Jack, 8 9, 8 10, sorry, 8
7
Jack.
10, 6 7, all the flush draws.
It's interesting.
Actually, the beauty of this sizing from Ben, I think, means that we almost never get check raised.
Right.
So
even if the opponent has, even if your opponent has Jack 10, they're going to just call here and let you set yourself up for the river.
Like, I don't expect Ben to go 3 here unless a 5 peels, right? Or unless an ace hits the river. So I actually kind of like this sizing for those reasons. You know, whereas if he bets smaller and does get check raised, puts himself in a really tricky position.
Yeah, the only thing there is obviously when he bets the turn, even though he's holding an ace, he's really looking for folds, not for calls, isn't he? Because he's trying to knock out the draws. And the flop pairs that have missed on the turn are probably going to check fold. So when he calls, he knows he's probably in bad shape.
Sure. I'm quite interested to see Paul peel here. Not that it's necessarily terrible or anything, but, you know, Andres feasibly has a pretty strong opening range here. And even Charles calling the button is never going to be monumentally weak or anything. And from the small blind, it's difficult for us, you know, to just hammer the players.
Do you think here Steve's looking at ace 10? Is this a spot he can squeeze? He knows Andres is likely to get a little out of line. He loves to open pots up. Charles is pretty capped when he just flats. And of course, Paul the same. That Could have been a spot, and you know, if he ends up 3-bet getting in against Andras, so be it. He's got ace-10.
Sure, I think that is the main concern there for Steve. We have seen that Charles is peeling quite wide in some situations. And yeah, if we squeeze, we're just going to have to call off Andras and probably fold to the other two. But yeah, Demps, it definitely could have been viable. There's a lot of money in the pot already. I like a check here.
More diamond board, of course.
Wow.
Wow, what a turn card for Charles as he makes the straight. Steve still with second pair. Andras with the open-ended straight draw, second pair, and the queen high flush draw.
Steve should check here theoretically, which he does. This is a terrible spot for Andras here because Charles is going to start betting. It's close to impossible for Andras to fold this turn, I believe. He blocks king-queen. He has flush draw to the queen and an open-ended straight draw and second pair. I think you can expect this to always be a bet from Charles. And what does Steve do, Demps? That's the question. That might be the most interesting spot here. It's a very small bet.
4.4.
Steve probably has to call one here.
Strong hand on this board. For that sizing, he's obviously decided to call.
Yes, agreed.
And Andras, well, he can not fold this hand, of course. Open a straight draw, flush draw, and second pair.
Yeah, he's definitely going to be more concerned that when Steve calls. Not that Steve, you know, has any completely nutted hands too often here. But if we can deduce that our diamond draw is live especially, that'll be a big concern. But if we will call also, which he does. Absolute dream of a river for Charles. I think Steve just taking a bit of time hoping that, you know, he can almost bully the button into giving him his showdown. It would probably have to be the nut flush, to be honest, and it would be Andras most likely to have it, the way the actions went.
But against that range of what, one pairs and missed draws, you're thinking sort of 40 to 50% pot?
I think so, Demps. I think that sounds perfect.
There we go.
He has, yeah, I like it. Yeah, good fold. Yeah, I mean, he can value bet very wide all of those hands. Not very wide, but all of his value hands can
Sure.
bet very wide, yeah.
Pop the flush.
There you go.
Right.
This is exactly what he's worried about. Because it doesn't make sense, right, for Charles to bet a jack on the river, for example.
I think flop flush, obviously, I'm going to say, with the queen of diamonds, not that likely. There aren't that many combos of flop flush.
I feel like he should have taken a little more time there, Andras.
Yeah, he made up his mind pretty quickly, and
no time bank cards, or
he's got time back cards
does?
there.
Interesting.
And pocket tens. Do we have a raise here? You say it's a what, 5.5 big blind jam. Is that big enough that we can flat with nearly our entire range because people are disincentivized to overcall, or is it a little bit too small?
Yeah, this is kind of awkward. I expect him just to flat, to be honest, and proceed. None of the smaller stacks are going to ever get out of line here, right? Because they want to see Andras eliminated.
Right.
So
yeah, no one's going to 3-bet with ace-5 suited and try and ISO you.
no, and I think the same can be said, really. I don't think Steve and Paul are really going to attack us too wide.
Well, Andras is in a flip. Jack 6-5, the flop. Andras pairs that jack, needs to just fade a 10 here, running clubs.
It's
Well,
always a sweat, Andras.
It's never easy. Any club or 10 would send Andras out.
This would be cruel. This would be cruel. Don't do it to him.
Guy's showing a lot of heart today.
Yeah, he really has.
I want to see him stick around a little bit longer. Oh, a black card. But it is the king that gives him, well, top 2. Not necessary for the double up, but he'll take it. You see, with that double up, Andras still the shortest stack on 14 big blinds. It is Tesco with 20. And then a pretty big jump to Ben and Charles now in third place. They are hovering around the 50 big blind mark. Paul with 70 bigs, but Steve Edouard still out in front holding 81 big blinds. But they are now playing out, I believe, the last 6 levels today.
This is close. Sorry to cut you off, Demps.
Yeah,
I would
right.
not be surprised, and he has put it in. You know, Steve is going to be opening lots of hands. We know this. He's going to open, you know, all his jack 10s and stuff like this. Andres will be thrilled there when he gets snapped off to see that he is indeed flipping.
I think that's fine. 15 bigs, pairs a pair, six-handed. Let's go.
Sure.
And how crazy this final table has been thus far. Oh, Jack 4-5. Things looking pretty good for the pocket threes thus far.
Ooh.
Well, 3. He does pick up different outs. Deuce will give him the
do
wheel. 9 on the end. Andras double-double. Certainly back over 30 big blinds.
40 bigs deep. Difficult to see Steve doing anything else. Hand's not strong enough to 3-bet call, and 3-bet folding is, of course, a disaster. Oh.
Wow. 8, 9, 10. Ben flops a set. Not for the first time on this final table. But it's a dangerous-looking board.
But any 10x, any king-jack. Wow, he checks back. Quite surprised. I feel like
Steve, and with a pair and a straight draw. Is this a hand he wants to bet himself because it's such a dangerous board? Where he is going to...
Wow, he's overbet the pot.
It's gone big. Just trying to smash into these sort of, what, 8x and 9x and even 10x that Ben has checked back the flop with, right?
That's what's such a brilliant thing about checking here is that Ben, in general, represents a capped range. You know, even like Ben can feasibly check back like ace 10 here for absolute sure. He's going to check. He's going to have some kings and aces check backs that can be put under a lot of pressure and a lot of runouts. And like you say, Demps, all the 9x and stuff. This is working out beautifully for Ben. If this board bricks out, I think Steve's going to be aware that his 7s are no good.
I can move.
And he may look to really put max pressure on Ben here. A 6 is a disaster.
Oh, Jack as well. Steve makes the straight.
Wow. For sure. I mean, if we're checking back a set of 9s, then we will be checking back queens.
12 million.
And he's going for value, 12 million. Of course, Ben has some hands, I guess, like 2 pairs, Jack 8, Jack 9, Jack 10. All might check back the flop.
He's changing his mind. I think he was going to find the fold.
Think long, think
Well
wrong.
done, Ben.
And that hurts. Flop a set, 6-handed on a final table and end up folding it.
Showing his class, though, right? To not just frustration call or anything like this.
And look at this. 7s versus 7s. These are the fun ones. Ben opening the hijack off those 25 bigs. Charles in the cutoff.
From what we've seen, Charles will peel this hand. He's, you know, most of his selections have been to call in position rather than 3-bet, which he does. Now this is interesting. Yeah,
And
I mean, like Paul's not going to fold this hand. He was just thinking, should he overcall or should he squeeze?
10 seconds.
Paul's taken a lot of the spots today.
Yeah, I think what makes squeeze attractive here is that Ben is capable enough to open wider than most off that stack depth.
Right.
You know, being one of the best players at the table. He has decided to peel with, and that's fine. Oh,
Roger.
wow, this is interesting.
He does move all.
I like this. I really like this.
I like that as well. So many chips in there already when it gets to him. You see, if he gets this through, it picks up about 12, 13 million.
Honestly, Ben is hating life today. Like the last few... ironically, he's played close to perfect, I think. We haven't seen him make any missteps. I'm not sure that Ben always folds. He probably will. It's probably a little too low in his range to call.
She has a good
no,
point.
he's
Actually,
going for
yeah,
it.
sorry. Yeah, I was thinking Ben would fold, but no, of course.
I mean, it's like
Against
18 big blinds, you know. I think pocket 9s, for example, we always call.
Yeah.
This is one of those spots where Ben probably is just deciding there's dead money in the pot. It's a spot where Roger is incentivized to squeeze a little bit lighter. Exactly,
and of course, like we say, the overlaid's cool, and the 2 players behind didn't 3-bet, so they're probably not that strong, probably always folding to his jam. If he hits, nearly impossible for Ben to get out of it. Well, he's found the bricky flop, 9-8-5.
Yeah. Oh,
there it is.
Oh, look
6, but does give Roger that flush draw.
Oh, this would be very cruel on Tolerine.
Diamond on the end.
Oh my goodness.
That is that. Ben down to just 10 million in chips. Roger with the ginormous double up, and then some with the dead money in the pot, up to 68 million himself. All smiles.
Don't hurt as much anymore.
Poker really is a horrible game sometimes.
Jack in the door, followed by Queen 5. Ben needing a king. I say we know Ben. I assume Ben will be jumping over to the 250k. He might not be, but you know, obviously absolute crusher in the game. We'll be hoping though. It's not to be ace on the end.
Fun, guys.
Well, like you say, a shame to lose
Yeah,
Ben,
it really
such an
is.
accomplished player. Even on a table like this, such a strong player.
Yeah.
That, as you said, everyone will be happy to get rid of. Zhao said it himself. Steve and Ben, obviously, with the chip stack, two of the toughest players in the world.
Very dangerous. Yeah, rightly so, taking some time to think about this. So what, something in the realm of 15 million? Maybe even a bit bigger, out of position?
Right, you can have to make it big.
Wow,
All
he
in, okay.
stripped it.
And this is one of these situations that was bizarrely, it's the lower variance line, isn't it? Because you
Sure.
just stop Steve doing anything to you and you just pick up the pot so often. In this instance, of course, Steve will be calling, surely, with ace-king.
I mean, he will. It sounds ridiculous, but I don't think he's going to be absolutely buzzing to call this off.
And well, we're going to have the biggest pot of the tournament.
Yep. I mean, he can never fold. But I think Steve will be thinking here that I'm going to be flipping a good amount.
Well, this could well be, well, this will be a tournament-defining pot.
Yeah.
So yeah, right now, going to have about 150 million of the 400 million in play in this pot. And Andrus's face there hates it to hear that, but he's going to love to see once more he's in a flip.
He has the one hand he wanted him to have.
Now he's dodged a few of these today.
Wow, this is massive, huh?
Can Andrus do it again? Ace 3-4. Any surprise? Steve O'Dwyer finds that ace. Queen on the turn. 5 on the end. That is that. Well, Andrus, he had the spin up, didn't he? They gave him the poker gods gave him the sweat from 5 big blinds all the way up to a chip lead flip. But not to be. And look at that stack of Steve O'Dwyer, just short of 190 million. Nearly a half the chips in play with 4 players left. It's going to take a lot to get him out of this tournament. Andrus
He's building a wall.
does depart in 5th place. As I say, though, picks up $550,000.
Oh wait,
And that was some...
shouldn't we have been playing with half ante also?
He's still complaining. Classic stuff
playing
from
with full
Mr.
ante.
O'Dwyer.
He's right there. They have been playing with a full ante
Oh,
with
yeah?
5 left.
We have been playing full ante the last.
Oh, Ryan the hand back.
It's 4 of us, right?
I can guarantee you that that call is just Paul. It's probably the last thing that Paul wanted to hear.
Yeah, just jam on me and I can be done with it.
At least if he jams, we're not like, oh, what am I going to do?
Steve O'Dwyer. Great understanding of what's going on here.
Yeah.
Probably because of that
lot,
break.
right? So when he does make this squeeze, it's either going to be hands like this that are just trying to leverage the other 2 out of the pot, or it's going to be, you know, a very good value hand. And Steve, of course, is blocking those hands.
So does Steve therefore just check this back?
I think so. We have enough showdown against the kind of 3-bet bluffs of Paul. Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Well, king on the turn. This is a card, I guess now Steve was pretty happy thinking, oh, I might be ahead, but this is a card he might bluff on now,
Sure.
right? Because Paul does have some better hands that can't continue now. If he did have a hand, say, like...
In terms of, you know, Steve could definitely flat with 8s and 9s.
Right,
And, the spot pre.
and Paul has obviously all the ace-kings.
Although we do block 9s. But yeah, we do exactly. And
but
Steve never does,
And
basically.
Paul probably does still check this turn with ace-king, right? And go for a river bet? Is that I mean, Paul doesn't necessarily give up bluffing by checking this turn, does he? If it checks through again, he can definitely bluff the river.
That's true, and represent like thin value or a checked king would make the most sense.
And look at this. Steve makes Broadway on the end, because why not? He's Steve O'Dwyer.
I mean, the problem is for Paul now is, you know, Steve always has showdown, right? Like, Steve hasn't called the pre-flop squeeze with 8-9 suited here. It just hasn't. So the question Paul's running through his mind is, if I bet, I'm basically targeting to fold out a hand like Jack-10 suited, right? Which is possible that we could represent, you know, like you said, a hand like Ace-King. And
Right, he's going up about half pot.
I mean, he's just going to get snapped off.
Yeah, of course. It's not going to work against a straight.
Sure.
And obviously no value in raising from Steve here. He's only going to call by better. And Paul can have better. He can have kings, he can have jacks, he can have king, queen, he could have... well, quad queens, of course, is also possible, albeit very unlikely.
Just call.
There we go.
He's saying just call, and he kind of knows that's the player instinct, right? Like he sensed that it would be possible to get called by worse.
Right, and Paul, like I say, I think is the guy who could hero you off.
Yeah.
I'm not saying Paul's a station. I'm just saying he's he's kind of brave enough to balls this up and come forth if he thinks his opponent is bluffing. Going quite big, 4 million with 2.5x. Roger with a suited ace in the big blind. Will that be an easy defend for him? Remember, these guys all over 30 bigs deep. Jack 10-9. Paul flops and opening a straight draw to go with that those pocket eights. Roger with the backdoor nut heart draw does check it on over to the pre-flop raiser.
And the hands that don't have a piece, you know, that have no equity, we are going to be able to get to showdown anyway. Wow, interesting turn.
Wow, huge turn card. Yeah, Paul makes the straight. Roger gut shot straight draw and the nut flush draw.
The real question here is whether Roger elects to start turning his hand into a bluff. It's actually a reasonable hand to do it with. Our opponent could have, you know, like an ace-10, some type hand, some 10x, some 9x. I think I like this as a lead for Roger.
Right, but it looks like it's going a little bit too small. Would you say 3.5?
Maybe in terms of, you know, obviously this is never getting rid of Paul on the turn. But I think if Paul has a hand, you know, like ace-9 or something, he'd probably just win the pot, right?
Right, against something like that. But when we bet, aren't we trying to say we got a straight?
Yeah. You could argue that there's almost none.
9.
Wow, look at this.
Wow.
Raises it up with the bottom straight, recognizing.
The interesting thing here also is that even if Roger has a king, he never ever raises here.
Yeah.
Right? So we actually get to set the price for when he does have his beat.
Right.
We might even fold out an 8 somehow.
Right, we set the price for showdown, but you also set the price for the draws. So it works both directions. This is a pretty fun spot on the end.
I mean, it's going to go check.
Right.
Basically. Roger can never lead, basically. Even with a king, we would be checking this river.
9.
Nice.
Wow, he is going for it. 1/3 pot.
This is interesting. I would love to hear his thoughts about a hand like this.
Yeah, I'm not sure about this. I think this is a bit of fancy play syndrome. This is a little bit too thin.
I think I like the turn raise for the reasons we just discussed.
Love the turn raise.
Yeah,
it's great.
I really do. I like that.
As we look at these stacks here, when they go on dinner, Charles with 26 bigs, Roger with 22, when we return to 1 million, 2 million blinds. Paul with just under 40 bigs, but Steve O'Dwyer, of course, still way out in front with 110. You see, Andras Nemeth came 5th for 550,000. It was Ben Tollerine in 6th, picking up $450,000. As Paul limps in from the small with ace. Steve with with 8-9 suited.
Yeah,
Steve with 6s.
I mean, Steve is going to raise. The question is, wow. Well, I am wrong, guys. I find that very surprising.
I'm with you. I'm surprised he didn't raise. I think I would just be happily raising, playing a slightly bigger pot with 6s. If he gets it through, it's great because his opponent has a lot of equity against 6s. If he gets action, well, he has a pair at Hold'em. It's pretty tough to make pairs. And I mean, there's a small chance you get limmy raised, and it'd be pretty horrible. But you know, make your opponent do that. We haven't seen that happen yet. You can't be too scared of that.
Even then, if your opponent limps at this stack depth, I think that it's more likely that Paul would limp shove.
Right.
And then, you know, 6s we get to decide. There are some worse pairs that would limp shove, some worse, you know, some ace-x hands, etc. I know we don't want to play an inflated pot, but the problem now is we still think we have the best hand, a very good amount.
Well, that will help Steve slow down a little bit, won't he? Because some of the hands Paul check calls with are 5x and 9x.
Yeah.
Both of those now, of course, ahead of 6s. The straight draws, well, Steve blocks them.
Yeah.
So he's going to give Paul more credit for a hand.
We get to check back as well, and if Paul has like a decent ace-x, he's not going to bluff it on the river, so we can decide.
Wow.
I mean, we might as well go home, guys.
Is there any surprise? And Paul with an interesting decision here. Then.
I mean, Steve has plenty 4x also that can bet small just to deny equity.
Wow, Paul check.
Oh, this is a very awkward spot now.
Now, Steve. So how much does Steve bet?
14.5 million.
This is so tough, so tough to get away for those reasons. Look, he's hating it.
Obviously, deuce 3 gets there, 3-7 gets there, 7-8 gets there. Too often. So yeah,
Yeah, I
completely
mean,
understandable call there.
I think so. That is tough.
Yeah, Paul basically had one of the best hands he's ever going to have on the river there with a
Yeah.
9.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, we thought he was going to value bet that hand.
For us. Oh, no.
Here we go.
Sorry, Paul. Yeah, this is GG.
They have the same stack. Roger opening the button, Paul with an easy jam from the big. Roger with the easier call, holding kings. And,
wow.
well, whoever wins this is going to be back in the mix. Queen, Queen, 9. 2 clubs. Paul does have a club, so can turn some additional outs here. Jack of clubs on the turn. Here we go. He's in the race.
Who doesn't love a bit of drama?
Club or 8.
Who doesn't love the drama? As good as it gets for Paul.
How about the 10 of clubs for a straight flush? That
Ooh.
Seems worthy of this final. Oh, a jack on at the end. Roger up to 98 million. Paul left with just one big blind.
Steve O'Dwyer show.
There it is.
Then,
Well,
then,
no,
you turn an ace.
Nah, that's old school.
Like, watch. Boom.
Well, one more card to hit or it'll be the end of. 3 on the end. That is that. Pretty cruel exit for him. Running those 8s into kings after dominating the early play on this final table, turning the shortest stack into the chip lead. 8.2. Charles, pretty easy defend here, holding.
Easy.
That's all right.
Sorry, guys. We can blame Isaac's cocktail.
Isaac to the booth.
Yeah, where is Isaac? Actually, get him in the mix.
Jack, Jack 5. Albeit hard to make better fold and worse call. He is going to bet. Just keeping things simple.
The positive is, of course, we get to deny equity to 2 random cards. He will flat. There's no reason to raise here. Take a turn.
Six on the turn. Feel pretty comfortable at checking this back, right?
You can go either way in this kind of spot. I mean, the king is a very important card in terms of if we check back and a king comes, we're less concerned. You can go one of 2 ways. You can make a small protection bet and just, you know, deny equity to hands. And it's not the worst, though. Obviously, not terrible to bet.
And Roger's kind of made this difficult for himself, hasn't he, by raising pre-flop and
Wow,
then
look,
betting the flop.
This is
kind of kidded himself into. Well, of course, Charles does have some floats.
The thing
hands
about this
wrapped around
is,
the
he
jack,
hasn't
right?
shown himself to be that type of player, right?
Right.
So now this just goes check, check, I think, 100% of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's going to check, take a shot then.
So Charles, well, gets value with his 5 on the turn, I think.
I mean, we do beat a random float, but that's all we beat, right?
Right, yeah. Well, at least he's gone big. Given that he's repping a very tight range, having not done it, it's good that he's going to...
140, 140.
Don't know about you, but normally when someone doesn't 3-bet much, but he likes to take a flop, Steve, so I wouldn't be surprised he does call.
Yeah, I mean, ace-7 suited, even if you think, you know, a guy would have to be especially tight for you not to call here, I think.
Yeah.
Wow, what a flop. Heart, heart.
Wow.
King, King, 10.
Like a decent part of Steve's range.
Right. Ace
You
King
know, like
would've-
Steve never has Ace King, right?
Yeah.
So he's just going to put it in. So when Steve calls here, which we know he will, I don't think Steve will raise here. It doesn't really accomplish too much. We can bluff off worse hands, and even hands that beat us a little later in this hand.
Right.
Steve will always call. He does. This is where Charles needs to keep a cool head and be aware of what the range of his opponent is likely to look like.
Right, of course, normally Queen Jack would be a concern, but having 2 queens in
Exactly.
is not an issue.
So when you know your opponent doesn't have Ace King, you know your opponent is unlikely to have King Queen because we have it. So the biggest concern is a hand like King Jack. Not that often that that's the case. I don't mind this.
I was going to say, Charles is going to check his range here pretty much,
I think
isn't he?
so. You know, if you bet and you get shoved on, it's a disaster. We can check and call and evaluate rivers. Steve should never really value bet a 10 twice.
Right, Steve's value hands here would of course be a king.
Yeah.
Maybe a hand like 9s.
I don't think it's even really a concern, just because Steve probably shoves pre, right? This stack depth.
Right, okay. So it's just the king, like the
Sure.
king, queen, king, jack, and maybe queen, jack. Well, Charles improves to a straight on the river. Give him a nice, warm feeling.
Like, the interesting thing here is that Charles will be thinking that Steve has a 10 a lot, right? When it goes, the action proceeds like it has.
Right.
So if we check, our opponent will just always check back. So the interesting thing here is, what should we do to try and maximize money in this pot? This is the problem. When we bet, our opponent normally folds a 10. Well, not normally, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And when we check, our opponent checks, so it's pretty tough.
Charles is going to give
He has
Steve a
checked
chance
it.
then to
I
bluff.
kind of like it. And we block... yeah.
Well, Charles now the chip leader.
I think I like the way they both play the hand, to be honest.
Look at that. That reaction. Steve knows if it came a heart, he may have got the lot. The card off open and you flat king jack off from the
Yeah.
small. They're like, what are you doing? Why are you
100%.
flatting king jack off from the small, you idiot? Like, what a fish.
So what's going to happen eventually? We're just going to go back to the real old school and
What?
just everyone 4x is pre. And that's it. That's it. And
I
nothing
kind of
else.
envisage a situation where we're just like open jamming hands from huge stacks, you know.
And you just decide, can I call off? Who's whistling? I'm loving this.
Who else but Mr. Teska,
Young Roger.
the
So
musician.
Steve limped. Roger is going to go ahead and bet for value for sure. Steve won't be going anywhere here with an overcard and a gut shot to the nuts.
Yeah, and that important club in hand.
Yep.
Could even check raise here, I guess. But it's so small though.
Yeah. The problem with the check raise is like how much of a super strong range we would rep. This is interesting.
Right, will Roger find the second barrel holding top pair? A lot of Steve's hands do continue here, right? Like the hand
Yeah.
he has.
I actually think that we should bet turn here and we can decide river whether we want to go super thin. We want to kind of, you know, continue to get slightly worse hands to continue in the hand, deny equity to these hands and just get value from our 10.
He's gone 7 into 12.
It's tough for Steve to have too many better 10s, I think.
Right. He does have that 8x,
Yeah.
9x.
And we block a hand like 6-7, right, which could feasibly trump us, which is always good. Probably just goes check call, which it does. Interesting to see what happens on a blank. Wow, and see, Steve might see that as a blank.
Yeah, that.
Very interesting.
If he was ahead before, he's still ahead. That is the point.
This is
And Rog-
tough. This is very tough.
Roger's got to put Steve on what, some misdraws or
Yeah.
a 9x or 8x. So he can bet pretty big here,
Yeah,
can't he?
I mean, you basically might as well go big.
Oh, he's gone small. Well, that's always getting
I mean,
called.
he's never folding this.
You can beat some hands like a weaker 9, perhaps.
Interesting, we did allude to this earlier. Not to critique Roger in the slightest, because he's playing a very good game, but he hasn't been taking much time to
Right.
think through some decisions, you know?
21.
21.
I mean, I think they're getting in here. I can't imagine Roger's plan is to 3-bet fold.
I think he's the kind of player who would 3-bet fold here.
Yeah, he's not thrilled.
This is where 3-bet jamming is just so much better because we don't
Wow,
put ourselves
did
in
he
this spot.
fold?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I don't even, I mean,
I mean, I don't
I don't even
absolutely
hate it that
hate
much. Like, it's
Okay.
hard to think. King 7-4, 2 hearts.
So from what we've seen from Steve so far, he's c-bet heavy, which makes a lot of sense from the button. He does have a bunch of backdoors. He can fold out many better hands with 9 high.
No pair, no draw kind of hands.
And like he
'cause
goes big, and I like that. You know, like Charles, even with the 7, I don't expect him to fold, but you can never be comfortable here, right? You're always thinking there are a lot of bad cards for my hand. That's not one of them.
That's a great card for Charles. Undercard to a 7 and improves him to a gut shot straight draw.
But when... Oh, wow, he is going to go for it, though. I'm sort of surprised, Ems. I mean, it's easy for us to say it, right? Okay, let's go ahead and peel. But if we think that we're already in bad shape... But you are exactly right. Charles calling quickly.
There are some hands you're going to call the turn with and fold the river with. This seems to be perfect.
Now, this is the Steve O'Dwyer Show 9 river. There you go. Look at that. It's just the way it goes.
Amazing. This will go check, check.
Check, check. 85 million going to Steve.
7.
Wow.
8.
He's almost embarrassed.
Steve O'Dwyer retakes the chip lead, pulling in an 85 million chip pot with a rivered second pair.
Such a massive swing, you know. Every pot.
That is, you're right, that is a huge swing. I mean,
huge.
there's only 400 million in play, and there was 85 million in that pot. Steve on the button, 6.5 million with King 10.
I expect to see Charles defend. He's been doing a lot of 3-betting, and this stack depth makes sense to just defend.
8-8 deuce the flop, and well, we've seen it all day. Really, a really high C bet frequency from all players, but Steve O'Dwyer included. So will he fire here? No, he doesn't. This is perhaps a more standard line holding a hand like this, right? Check back.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Steve's going to think this hand's good a lot of the time. His opponent's going to 3-bet. The good ace is a very high percent.
Right.
So we have close to the top of our king high range. This will also go check, check, I think. Steve may actually elect a protection bet, thinking he has the best hand, but probably checks. No, he is going to do exactly what I suggested.
All right, so we'll go small, won't he? And here it is.
Yeah.
Just over, well, exactly 1.5 big blinds, in fact.
I mean, Charles will call here. We have way too strong a holding to fold. And unless a player improves, this normally goes check, check, river. I mean, you know.
It's just
guys,
not fair at this point, is it?
It really is not fair. Obviously, a clear value bet now for Steve. From what we've seen of Steve, I think he probably goes on a like maybe half pot here. Yep.
Wow.
He does call.
Well, Charles' face says it all.
Steve has been getting there in these spots, it must be said.
And suddenly things looking a bit more inevitable as Steve O'Dwyer hits the 240 million chip mark.
And honestly, this is a great candidate because the big blind is shorter than Charles.
Right.
You get to put $300,000 of real money pressure on him. Personally, I would love to see a 3-bet here. Like, you can basically go... You can go small, 17 to 18K here.
Well, he does
He has decided
just
to flat.
But yeah, I think you're right. You can really leverage that stack situation.
Obviously, flatting is completely fine. Just seems like a good spot, you know, to really make Charles shove.
And Queen,
Of
Jack,
course.
7. So Steve O'Dwyer for the first time tonight, flopping top pair. I jest, of course. Usually has a full house. Charles with second pair. And
I would like to see a check back.
Right,
Just, you know, even theoretically. This
yeah,
is good for
it's not a
Charles.
vulnerable hand, is it? You can check this back and...
Sure. I mean, it's just a terrible turn because now Steve semi-bluffs. We have to call.
Right, yeah, the showdowns are some ace highs, some jack X,
Yeah.
maybe some pocket pairs.
It's just
Like
so
eights,
tough.
9s, 10s.
I mean, if we fold here, we're just over-folding massively. I think that Charles must call turn. This is just extremely tough. Gotta call.
Every time. The perfect river.
Yep, clear value bet now for Steve. If we somehow know our opponent has a misdraw, we could check. I don't think that's the case here that often. Our opponent normally bets a draw on the flop, I think. You know, like a good diamond draw, you'd expect Charles to bet flop. Right. Even a hand like 9-10, right? He probably bets the flop if he's gonna bet. But like, what are Steve's misdraws? Like 9-10 suited, king 10. Steve could feasibly 3-bet ace 10 here for sure and just shove. Probably never has that hand, never has ace king. So Steve's misdraws are basically 9-10, king 10.
Right, and some diamond combos, right?
Sure.
And Charles blocks
Yep.
none of those, so it does make the call.
You can certainly understand it.
And just once more, Steve's river value bet gets paid off. And look at this, passing the 300 million chip mark. Roger with the same hand he folded from the big blind again. Well, here we go. It's snap cool. And, well, Charles is at risk, but Roger with only a few big blinds more.
Nines versus queen 7 off.
Telling the rail. Oh.
And that face says it all. Queen 10,
Queen
10.
Yeah.
There is
Well, look
the
at that
rail.
rail. It's quite a beautiful rail. Better than most poker rails I've seen.
Queen 7 off.
It's not going to be any consolation, though.
No. J'ai les 9, il y a queen 7 off, queen high flop.
Given the translation.
French.
The ladies look gutted.
See Sam Chartier and Pascal Francois on the rail.
Jack for a sweat.
Yeah, Jack for the sweat. Ooh, that's a sweat.
8 for a sweat. Jack or 9 would now do the business. And he brings a smile to his face.
Couple full houses.
6 outs.
Yep, he is right. 6 outs. Heading to the river. Will this be the end of Charles?
It
6
is.
on the end. Well, he put in a pretty strong performance today on this final table. Just ran into the buzzsaw that was Steve O'Dwyer toward the end there, losing multiple pots to him at Showdown. Charles at Boissonnaire eliminated in 3rd place. Not a bad consolation prize, $1 million. Not many tournaments where you can win that. He's got it for 3rd place. I can imagine that this party will go on into the night. It seems like everyone's ready to drink. Someone want a head start?
Yeah, very unfortunate for Charles. Played extremely well, you know, and you can't really get your money in much better. Sadly for him, run down by the Queen 7 of Roger. I've been overtaken.
Yep, so Phil
by a random Irishman, no less.
Phil will move down to 9th, whilst Steve O'Dwyer moves up to 8th in the all-time money list. All change here, but Steve O'Dwyer, look at that chip lead. 104 bigs, plays 27. All right, guys, we are back already for heads-up action. And Roger with aces on the button. Steve pairing a deuce, holding 6 deuce from the big. And so as we said, if Roger could get off to a fast start, there could be a game of this just yet. 25.5 million in the pot. Roger's hand certainly good enough for a second barrel. Does put the call in. Roger with a little over pot behind, holding 55 million chips. The flopped flush draw completes. Roger holds the 8 of hearts. Still tough to think of many hands he can get value against here.
Deuce.
He does check back. Steve announces deuce. Roger's aces taking this one down. Wow, what a hand we have here. Steve with kings, Roger with queens. Could this be it? Unbelievable setup. Steve making it 21 million to play. Just the question now for Roger, whether he wants to slow play these queens or make the move now. Would see the pot up to 42. He does move all in. Steve snap calls. Kings versus queens doesn't get much colder than that.
I had a queen before.
This heads-up match could be over in just a few hands.
That was a rookie mistake.
Yeah.
That was a rookie mistake.
Roger feels good about it, but he does need a queen. A 4-to-1 dog. An ace-queen 9, there it is. Steve needs a king, running spades or running straight. 5 of diamonds on the turn. Ace on the end does the trick for Roger. That is how quickly things can change. Heads up, Hold'em.
Unfortunately, it's a bad time to do it. I actually really don't mind this, especially if your opponent is opening every button, which we have seen to be the case so far. A case of bad timing for Roger. He's going to be cursing himself for not peeling.
63.
Will give some illusion of equity. That's what he's done. 63 million. Well, Roger's first 3-bet of the heads-up match met with a 4-bet. You'll feel like he's playing against a brick wall.
Yeah, the most frustrating aspect of this is that, you know, when you 3-bet a hand that has really good playability post and you do get 4-bet.
Okay,
this looks
after this hand.
interesting. So
Here we go,
after
yeah.
this hand, we're going to do it.
We have a potential clash with these two hands. Oh. Ace-10 deuce. Roger pairs his 10. Steve looking for him to make 2 pair. That would give him the Broadway straight. Steve with the queen of clubs.
Very standard check bet call. For maybe the first time, Steve is kind of moderating his c-bet sizing. Across the board at this final table, it's been large. Obviously, heads up, things change a little.
Picks up a flush draw on the 7 of clubs turn. This is one of the cards he'll barrel.
Absolutely should be. Our opponent's going to have, you know, a bunch of 10x. Obviously, we can see the cards, so it's easier. I'm very surprised that he checks this card back.
Is that a factor? Maybe if the 2 was, say, a 6 and he had more lower pair combos, may fire.
I mean, maybe, but personally speaking, I think like we still have a range advantage. We still have some good ace-x that are definitely going to bet the turn. We have all the flush combos that would barrel. Yeah,
Roger going for a little blocky.
I mean, that's what you call the give up face.
Yeah.
I mean, it is.
Have you ever seen a man pull that face and then raise?
But that's what I mean. It's just there is absolutely no chance that Steve does anything else but fold when he makes his face.
We're going to watch a great match between two contrasting styles, and as you say, we're seeing lots of hands.
You expect to see this go raise and call.
Nothing worse than seeing two tankers play heads up. This is quite the opposite. Fast-paced action, and these guys are throwing punches.
Yep. Something that's sorry, Damps, didn't mean to interrupt you. Something that's quite refreshing. We haven't seen one limp heads up. It's kind of a it's kind of a throwback.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of raising, a lot of 3-betting.
The question is, does Steve feel his hand has enough showdown? Obviously, as the initial aggressor, we can bet a lot.
He picks up a gut shot, straight draw, and the 9-high flush draw here, but Roger with
It's
top
a
pair.
great turn for Roger.
And the nut flush draw in much better spot.
With the fact he has the ace of clubs. This is interesting.
Right, this is probably the best ace to check again, isn't it? He does decide to bet.
I'm thinking more in terms of Steve's holding here. Our opponent shouldn't have that many good aces. We do have a gut shot to the nut straight. And also we have the 9 of clubs, which is pretty important. If we are behind to a hand like randomly queen 10 or something like this, we can still peel. I would expect him to call.
So I'm about to say, so this makes it, everything you're saying makes it a prime candidate to raise, isn't it? We block the straight.
Yep.
We block the flush. Our hand might be ahead, but it's pretty much too weak to call.
I actually really like this from Steve.
Of course, this
basically from what we just discussed, he blocks the best straight, he blocks some flushes. Very quick call from Roger.
As you'd expect, of course, with that perfect candidate to call here.
If we do see a club, this is going to be interesting.
Well, does Steve follow through?
He has to know that his hand is no good. Like, there are no combinations that Roger leads and calls that don't beat a pair of 9s.
Right.
I mean, it would literally have to be the king of clubs with a 4, 5, 6, 7, etc.
60.
Wow.
I mean, this is strong poker from
60
Steve.
million chips in a 7-4. And as you've pointed out, very quick once again. These guys are playing fast.
The thing about this bet, the thing I love the most, is it's super believable.
Yeah.
Like we can easily have a hand. I mean, obviously we have the ace of clubs, so he never has the nut flush. But we can have a hand like King 9 of clubs that decided to check back flop.
Right, this is the thing.
Certainly feasible.
Players these days are so much more balanced in their checkbacks that he can have flushes, can have king jack. There's plenty of club and straight combos that would check back turn.
Wow,
And there we go.
like this, the guys are playing some great poker. I must
And
say.
Steve does the flick back look at his cards as if he had a big hand before throwing them in the muck. Steve raising the button, 5-6 off. Roger defends king 8 and finds king 6 deuce.
Now this could get interesting. Now, like I would expect Steve to bet. This is one interesting thing in poker. People don't tend to incorporate a check raise in here, right? Like normally when you check raise these spots, we're sort of polar to like 2-pair kind of hands or bluffs. I would love to see a check raise here because it won't make a lot of sense to Steve. And here we go. So
This is nice. You called it exactly.
it's true though, right? Like it's one of these spots where people don't tend to check raise a king. They will check call a lot. And now all of a sudden Steve's going to be thinking, okay, why are you check raising? You don't have a really, really good king. You would 3-bet me pre. Yeah, I mean, this makes absolute sense that you take one off.
Right. He has to continue with a 6 and a king here.
Definitely.
Ace on the turn
Now,
again.
this is super interesting now. Because a lot of Steve's float range is an ace high.
Right, Steve
right?
can bet ace high and call a check raise here
Of
because the raise
course.
makes little sense. So he can have hit that ace. It's not like some scenarios where it's more like a brick. This one is definitely possible.
The thing about this is when Roger check raises, we have to think about his theoretical bluffs.
Wow, Steve
Yeah.
betting here. Now, is this a case you think he's betting because he wants to protect a 6?
No, I actually think this is more, although I'm looking at the sizing and it's kind of intriguing, he's betting just under 1/3 of the pot.
Yeah.
So when we bet here, we do look to deny equity to 2 random cards like a 3-4, a 4-5, etc. This is a great card for Roger, obviously.
Surely this...
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like Steve was just betting some kind of block bet
You think
on the
just
turn.
to deny equity?
I mean, he's setting... I can't see him setting up for a big river bet.
Oh no, sure. Like, I mean, especially on this precise river, it's.
Wow!
Wow!
Steve,
And it's so hard to be bluffing.
it really is.
This is.
What are his natural bluffs? If he floats the flop,
There are
he has
none.
ace-x,
There are none.
or he has a gut shot draw. That's it.
I mean, we can shove king queen for value also.
Yeah.
This is what I mean about the time bank thing, right? If Roger time banks out here, I'm super against this.
Well, Roger did make such a weird, not weird, but unorthodox check raise on
I
the
like
flop
a
with
heads
king.
up
Oh,
one.
he's found
Yeah.
the call.
What a
And
good
Steve
call.
with a grin. Great call from Roger. And the chip stacks swip around. Swip around? Switch around.
Wow. Big moment in this Millions World. Heads up.
Still has work cut out if he wants to take that thing home with him.
Interesting spot here. There's, some schools have thought we could limp shove this type of hand at 30 big blinds in depth.
Wow.
Whoa!
Roger just moves all in.
I don't
with
think we can fold. I don't think we 3-bet shove a better hand at this speed. Yeah, he's going to call.
He calls. Wow.
He has to call. Like,
Roger's going to be shocked to find out what great shape he's in. Is a tiny...
Like Roger's just decided he's just going to rifle it in.
Roger wants to play big pots.
Wow.
50-50 to double
Look
up.
at the percentages, guys. Here we go. Oh!
8-4 deuce. Roger pairs that 8.
Wow,
And
just like that.
we can start moving that trophy a lot closer
Oh
to
my
his seat.
Goodness. 30 bigs.
Queen on the turn. Things are a lot nicer now. There are a lot of cards that could have given Steve extra outs. That was not one of them.
Oh!
3 on the river. That is not what Steve needed. Roger Teska, as quick as that, is your Millions World Champion. Well, it looks like Sarah is ready.
Congrats, Roger.
Hello, everybody. I am with your Millions World Champion, a really sick accomplishment. So talk to me a little bit about, just what this day felt like for you.
It felt amazing. I mean, I couldn't really expect to win with the caliber of player that was at the final table. I was just trying to have a good time and relax and enjoy myself, and I ran good and got lucky a few times, and now I've won. So it feels amazing.
Talk to me a little bit about, how you're able to kind of keep your A game, but still, keep a little bit of that fun in the game too.
Well, I wouldn't say that I keep my A game, first of all. I actually thought I played pretty bad most of the day. I just wasn't focused. I really couldn't settle into myself, but that doesn't always matter. As long as your cards hold up at the end, you're going to come away with some chips and a lot of money.
How do you think the tournament style versus the cash game style, when it's heads up, really clashes? Like, what are the sort of the benefits and not so good about each?
Well, I guess in the tournament style, everything's you're playing a much shallower stack, and the math component probably plays a much larger role than it does in the cash game. Math is an important period, but I mean it plays a much larger role. And these guys, they know exactly what to do, like what stacks to shove, what hands to shove, and the frequencies to do it with. And I don't know that stuff, so.
But you know to gamble sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. I know how to be lucky.
Your guys' newest champion in the Millions World, Roger Teska, sick. Take that 2015 PCA. This is the Millions World. This is how we do it on PartyPokerLive.com.